I'm Clara, 28, female, and my life took a sharp, unexpected turn the day my boyfriend of 4 years threatened to leave me during a petty fight over money. I didn't cry or argue. I just said, noted, and then I made a decision that would change everything between us. Our story, like many, didn't start with red flags. It started with laughter and that easy comfort that feels like coming home. I met Leo at a mutual friend's party. He was magnetic. While I was the type to stand near the wall, observing, he was the center of every circle, telling animated stories that made everyone roar with laughter. He was an event planner, and his life was a series of exciting moments, a constant whirlwind of people and places. I was a financial analyst, my life a series of calculated decisions and carefully planned futures. We were opposites, and for a long time that felt like our greatest strength. He pulled me out of my shell and I grounded him. It worked, until it didn't. The differences that once felt complementary began to feel like friction. The issue, almost always, was money. Not the lack of it, we were both comfortable, but the philosophy behind it. To me, money was a tool for building a secure and stable future. To Leo, it was a ticket to immediate gratification. Our shared dream, the one we talked about on our third date, was to buy a house with a small yard for a dog we'd name Gus. That dream was my North Star. I automated a significant portion of my paycheck into a joint high-yield savings account we'd labeled Future Home. I watched the balance grow with a quiet, profound sense of satisfaction. It wasn't just money, it was the foundation of our life together, brick by digital brick. Leo contributed to the account, but always with a sigh, as if it were a sacrifice of epic proportions. His idea of planning for the future was making a dinner reservation for the upcoming weekend. The first real crack in our foundation appeared about a year into our relationship. He came home one day with a massive, brand-new television, its screen so wide it barely fit on our console table. It was beautiful, sleek, and ridiculously expensive. "Surprise," he announced, beaming with pride. "Movie nights are about to get a major upgrade." I stared at the box, then at him. "Leo, this is a lot. How much did it cost?" His smile faltered. "Does it matter? It's for us. Think of the fun we'll have." "It does matter," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "We have a budget, we have the house goal. A TV this expensive wasn't in the plan." "Clara, you have to live a little," he scoffed, the charm melting away to reveal a familiar irritation. "It's not all about spreadsheets and savings goals. We can afford it." We could afford it, in the sense that the money was in his checking account, but it came at the cost of his contribution to our house fund that month. It was the first time I realized that to him, our shared goal was optional, something to be attended to only when there wasn't something more exciting to buy. Another time, a few months later, I was prepping our lunches for the week, a habit I'd kept since college to save money. Leo walked into the kitchen, dressed in a new designer jacket, and wrinkled his nose. "You're still doing that?" he asked. "Why don't we just get lunch delivered, or try that new cafe downstairs? My friends were talking about it." "This saves us over $200 a month," I said, sealing a container of chicken salad. "That's $200 more for the house." He sighed dramatically, leaning against the counter. "It's just a little embarrassing, my girlfriend packing lunches like we're broke. My colleagues all go out, it's about networking." Embarrassing, the word stung more than he could know. My prudence, my discipline, the very thing that was building our supposed dream, was a source of embarrassment for him. These weren't isolated incidents. They were a pattern. There was the time he bought front-row concert tickets for a band I didn't even like, the spontaneous weekend getaways that always cost twice what he estimated, the constant pressure to upgrade our car, our furniture, our lives, to match the glossy image he wanted to project. Each time I would voice my concerns, and each time I was painted as the boring one, the killjoy, the human calculator who was holding him back from a life of glamour and fun. And each time a little piece of my respect for him chipped away, leaving a space that was slowly, quietly, filling with resentment. I loved him, but I was beginning to feel like his accountant, not his partner. And the dream of our house was starting to feel like it was my dream alone. The fight that changed everything started, as most of them did, with a text message from Leo. I was at my desk, deep in a quarterly earnings report when my phone buzzed. It was a link to a luxury lakeside resort 3 hours away. The pictures showed infinity pools, private balconies, ND couples dining under a canopy of stars. It was beautiful, and I knew instantly, crushingly expensive. The next message read, Jason and Mark are going this weekend with their girlfriends. They have an extra villa. We should totally go. It'll be an epic weekend. I took a deep breath, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. I checked the resort's website. The price for a 2-night stay in one of their villas was just over $2,000. That was more than we both put into our house fund in a month. It was a reckless, absurd amount of money for a spontaneous trip. I texted back, Leo, it looks amazing, but that's way too expensive for us right now. We can't. His reply was almost instant. Don't say we, I can cover it. There it was again, the subtle division. I, not we. He was framing it as his treat, his grand gesture, which was his go-to tactic for shutting down any budget-related objections. But his money was our money, in the grand scheme of things. Every dollar he spent on a whim was a dollar that didn't go toward the life we were supposedly building together. I decided to wait until I got home to discuss it. Face-to-face was always better, though lately, our face-to-face talks felt more like depositions. I walked into our apartment a few hours later to find him pacing in the living room, his phone in his hand. He had that agitated energy he always got when he wasn't getting his way. Hey, I said, setting my bag down. So you just don't want to go, he started, not even bothering with a hello. You don't want to hang out with my friends. Of course I want to hang out with your friends, Leo, I said, keeping my voice calm and steady. It was a skill I had perfected over the years. That's not the issue. The issue is spending $2,000 on a weekend trip when we're so close to our down payment goal. We've been so good for the last few months. We're almost there. Oh my God, Clara, must you always be like this? He threw his hands up in the air. It's always about the down payment. It's always about the future. What about now? Jason and Mark are making memories. I want to make memories too. All you want to do is sit at home and watch a number go up on a screen. The accusation hit a nerve. It wasn't just a number to me. It was security. It was a promise. It was the physical manifestation of our commitment. That number is our future, Leo. The house, the dog, the life we said we both wanted. That's the memory I'm trying to build. A lasting one. It's boring, he snapped, his voice rising. I'm 26 years old. I don't want to live like a broke college student. I want to enjoy the money I make. And frankly, I'm tired of having to justify every single fun thing I want to do. This isn't just a fun thing, this is a massive expense, I countered, my own patience wearing thin. It's irresponsible. Our agreement was to cut back on big, frivolous purchases until we had the keys to our house in our hands. Your agreement, he shot back. You're the one with all the rules, the budgets, the spreadsheets. It's suffocating, Clara. It's like living with my mother. The insult hung in the air, thick and ugly. He knew how much I prided myself on being a supportive partner, not a nagging parent. He was deliberately trying to hurt me, to push my buttons until I either gave in or exploded. But I had no intention of doing either. I had run the numbers. I had analyzed the data. The decision was logical, not emotional. We could not afford the trip. I stood my ground. I'm sorry you feel that way, but the answer is no. We are not spending that kind of money on a 2-day trip. He stared at me, his jaw tight. I could see the wheels turning in his head, searching for the one thing, the final weapon that would guarantee a win. A cruel, smug look settled on his face. He took a step closer, his voice dropping to a low, menacing tone. You're so boring with your budgets, he said, his eyes cold. I could leave you any time, remember that. The world seemed to stop. It wasn't just the words, but the intent behind them. It was a pure power play. He was reminding me that he was the fun one, the desirable one, the one with options. He was telling me that I was lucky to have him, and that my refusal to do what he wanted was putting our entire relationship at risk. It was a threat, plain and simple, designed to make me feel small and scared. For years, I had met his emotional outbursts with my own, with tears, with frustration, with pleading. I had engaged in the drama, fought back, and allowed the arguments to spiral for hours until we both collapsed from exhaustion. But this time was different. As his words hit me, something inside me didn't break. It clicked into place. It was a moment of absolute, chilling clarity. A person who is building a future with you does not hold that future hostage over a weekend getaway. A partner does not use the threat of abandonment as a bargaining chip. He stood there waiting for my reaction, the tears, the anger, the inevitable surrender. I gave him none of it. I looked him directly in the eye, my expression unreadable. All the emotion drained out of me, replaced by a strange, cold calm. I saw the situation not as a lover but as a financial analyst. I saw the risk he had just laid bare. The instability, the unreliability of my primary partner. I gave a single, slow nod. "Noted," I said. The silence that followed was more profound than any shouting match we'd ever had. The single word, delivered with no emotion, no anger, no fear, completely disarmed him. He blinked, a flicker of confusion crossing his face. He had expected a fight. He had not expected an acknowledgement. He didn't know it yet, but he had just lost more than an argument. He had just changed the entire equation of our relationship. After I said noted, I turned and walked into our bedroom, closing the door softly behind me. I didn't slam it. There was no anger to fuel such a gesture. There was only a quiet, hollow certainty. I sat on the edge of our bed, the bed we had picked out together, and listened to the silence from the living room. I could hear him shifting his weight, probably still standing in the same spot, trying to compute what had just happened. He had deployed his nuclear option, and I had simply acknowledged receipt of the threat. There was no script for this. My heart wasn't racing. My eyes were dry. The part of me that would normally be wounded and desperate to fix things had gone silent. In its place, my analytical mind was whirring, processing his words like a new, critical piece of data that had been entered into a long-running projection. Statement: I could leave you any time. Variable introduced: extreme partnership instability. Risk assessment: high. The primary asset of our shared portfolio, the future, is subject to the emotional whims of one party. The joint investment is therefore at unacceptable risk. I pulled my knees to my chest, wrapping my arms around them. It was strange. I felt a profound sense of loneliness, but also a startling sense of liberation. The constant, low-grade anxiety I'd been living with for years, the anxiety of managing Leo's impulses, of trying to steer our financial ship through the storms of his desires, was gone. He had given me an out, not from the relationship, but from the responsibility of being the sole guardian of our future. He had declared, in no uncertain terms, that he was not a reliable partner in this venture. For years, I had been operating under the assumption that we were a team. I had put in the extra hours, made the small sacrifices, and shouldered the mental load of our long-term planning because I believed we were both working towards the same goal. But his words revealed the truth. I was working towards our goal while he was focused on his fun. The house, the yard, the dog named Gus. It was my dream, and he was just along for the ride, as long as the ride was comfortable and exciting. I thought about all the times I had defended him to my friends and family. My sister Sarah had always been skeptical of him. "He just seems flimsy, Clara," she'd said once, "like a beautiful kite with no one holding the string." I had bristled at her words, defending his spontaneity as a virtue, a necessary balance to my own cautious nature. Now, sitting in the quiet of my room, I realized Sarah hadn't been judgmental. She had been perceptive. Leo was a kite, and I was the one on the ground, my hands raw from holding the string, trying to keep him from flying away into the sun or crashing into a tree. His threat was not just a threat, it was a gift. It was the truth, handed to me in a moment of anger, and I had to decide what to do with it. I could cry, I could go out there and demand an apology. We could have a long, tearful conversation where he would promise he didn't mean it, that he was just angry. We would make up, and things would go back to normal. But normal was the problem. Normal was me worrying and him spending. Normal was me feeling like a mother and him feeling like a caged bird. Normal was the slow erosion of my own peace of mind. I stood up and walked to my desk in the corner of the room. I opened my laptop, the screen illuminating my face in the dim light. I didn't look at social media or news sites. I logged into our joint bank account. There it was, the number I was so proud of, the fruit of my discipline and our combined earnings. It was a substantial sum, nearly enough for the 20% down payment we needed for a modest starter home in our area. I looked at it, and for the first time I didn't feel pride. I felt an urgent, protective instinct. This number wasn't ours anymore, because us was no longer a certainty. Us was conditional. Us could be terminated at any time without warning. A person who could leave at any time should not have access to half of my life savings. The decision's soul. Edified in my mind, not with a crash of emotion, but with the quiet, firm click of a key in a lock. It was the most logical, rational, and necessary move I could make. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about punishing him. It was about risk mitigation. It was about treating his words with the seriousness he intended them to have. He wanted me to remember he could leave. Okay, I would structure our finances to reflect that reality. I closed the laptop. I knew exactly what I had to do tomorrow. The plan formed in my mind, clear and precise. There would be no more arguments, no more pleading. There would only be action. An action so unexpected, so contrary to my usual role in our relationship that he would have no possible response. He had made his move on the chessboard. Now it was my turn. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm. A cool, gray light filtered through the blinds. Leo was still asleep, breathing softly beside me. For a moment, the familiar routine settled in, and a wave of sadness washed over me. I looked at his face, relaxed in sleep, and I saw the man I had fallen in love with, the charming, funny, life-of-the-party man who had brought so much color to my world. But then I remembered his words from the night before, the coldness in his eyes, and the sadness was replaced by resolve. I slipped out of bed, got ready for work in silence, and left the apartment without waking him. I didn't leave a note. My first stop was not the office. It was the downtown branch of our bank, a large, imposing building with marble columns and hushed tones. I walked in at 9:01 a.m., my work tote bag feeling heavier than usual on my shoulder. I approached a friendly-looking bank teller, a woman with kind eyes named Maria. "Good morning," I said, my voice steady. "I need to speak with a personal banker about closing a joint account." Maria led me to a small, private office. A few minutes later, a man in a crisp suit named Mr. Harrison greeted me and sat down behind a large wooden desk. He pulled up our account information. "A joint high-yield savings," he said, looking at the screen. "You have a very healthy balance here, Ms. Miller. Excellent rate of return. May I ask why you're looking to close it?" I met his gaze directly. My partner and I are restructuring our finances. The joint nature of the account is no longer suitable for our circumstances. I chose my words carefully, keeping them professional and devoid of emotion. He nodded, a flicker of understanding in his eyes. He had probably presided over the financial dissolution of hundreds of relationships. "I see. Well, since you are both primary account holders, you have every right to do so. We will need to distribute the funds. How would you like to proceed?" This was the part I had rehearsed in my head all night. I want the total balance, down to the last cent, to be divided into two equal halves. Exactly 50-50. He typed for a moment. "Okay, that's a straightforward calculation." "Good," I continued. "I would like my half to be deposited into a new personal savings account, under my name only. The other half. I would like you to issue a cashier's check made out to the other account holder, Leo Vance." Mr. Harrison paused his typing and looked up at me, a hint of surprise on his face. This was clearly not the standard procedure. Usually, the person closing the account just took their half, or sometimes, they took everything. Requesting a cashier's check for the other person was a deliberate, formal act. It was clean. It was final. It was undeniable. "A cashier's check," he confirmed. Yes, please, I said firmly. He nodded slowly and got to work. The process took about 20 minutes. There were forms to sign, new account agreements to review, and identity confirmations to complete. With each signature, I felt a weight lifting off my shoulders. The invisible burden of financial anxiety I had been carrying for years was being transferred to paper, processed, and filed away. I wasn't destroying our future. I was securing my own. I was taking control of the one part of my life I could, my own stability. Finally, Mr. Harrison slid two things across the desk toward me. The first was a folder with the documents for my new private savings account. The second was a crisp, light blue cashier's check. I picked it up. The words "Pay to the order of Leo Vance" were printed in clear block letters. Below it was the amount, a significant five-figure number that represented exactly half of our dream. Holding it felt surreal. It was an ending and a beginning, all in one piece of paper. It was the physical manifestation of my decision. It was proof that I had listened. "Is there anything else I can help you with today, Ms. Miller?" Mr. Harrison asked, his voice gentle. "No," I said, sliding the check into a protective sleeve in my bag. "That will be all, thank you for your help." I walked out of the bank and into the bright morning sun. The city was bustling around me, people rushing to work, cars humming past. The world was exactly the same as it had been an hour ago, but my world had been fundamentally altered. I felt no guilt. I felt no glee. I felt a sense of profound, unshakable calm. I had taken his threat, a tool meant to control me, and used it to liberate myself. When I got home from work that evening, the cashier's check was nestled safely in my bag. Leo was in the kitchen, humming, chopping vegetables for dinner. He was in a good mood, part of his usual post-fight routine, where he acted overly charming as if to erase the conflict. "Hey you," he said, smiling brightly. "I thought I'd make your favorite pasta tonight, a little peace offering." "Thank you, Leo. That's thoughtful," I said, my tone polite but neutral. I went into the bedroom, took the check out of my bag, and placed it inside my top dresser drawer, underneath a stack of sweaters. There it would wait. I didn't know if it would be a day, a week, or a month, but I knew the moment of discovery was inevitable. And for the first time in a very long time, I wasn't afraid of the confrontation to come. I was prepared for it. The week that followed was one of the strangest of my life. On the surface, things were normal. Leo, seemingly having decided to forget the fight entirely, was on his best behavior. He made dinner every night. He suggested we watch movies I liked. He brought me coffee in the morning and told me I looked beautiful. It was the classic Leo charm offensive, a tactic he used whenever he felt he'd pushed me too far. In the past, I would have softened. I would have seen his efforts as a genuine apology and let the warmth of our routine lull me back into a sense of security. But this time, it was like watching a movie where I already knew the ending. His charm felt hollow, his gestures calculated. I saw his behavior not as an act of love, but as an act of course correction. He had rocked the boat with his threat, and now he was doing everything he could to steady it, completely unaware that I had already climbed into a lifeboat. I played my part. I was polite, I was pleasant, but I was distant. I was an observer in my own life. I ate the pasta he made and complimented his cooking. I watched the movies with him, my head resting on the opposite end of the couch. When he reached for my hand, I let him hold it, but I didn't squeeze back. My body was there, but my mind was somewhere else, insulated by the secret tucked away in my dresser drawer. My new emotional distance was not lost on him. He would often look at me with a puzzled expression, a little furrow in his brow. He was used to me being emotionally transparent. He knew my moods, my tells, my breaking points. But this new version of me was a closed book. He couldn't read me, and it clearly unnerved him. "Is everything okay, Clara?" he asked one evening as we were clearing the dinner plates. "You've been quiet all week." "I'm fine," I said, my voice even. "Just tired from work." "Are you still mad about the other night?" he pressed, his tone cautious. "Because I was just blowing off steam. I didn't mean it, you know." I didn't mean it. 3 little words that were meant to erase everything. In the past, I would have seized on them, desperate for the reassurance. Now they sounded like a lie. Whether he meant it in that exact moment was irrelevant. The fact that he was capable of thinking it and saying it was the only thing that mattered. It was a window into his soul, and I couldn't unsee what I had seen. I heard what you said, Leo, I replied, not looking at him, focusing on rinsing a plate. And come on, Clara, don't be like this, he wheedled. We had a fight, couples fight, let's just move on. Okay, I said, and that was all. I didn't want to move on. I had already moved on, just not in the direction he expected. My simple, agreeable responses left him with nowhere to go. He couldn't escalate an argument if I refused to participate in it. He couldn't soothe my anger if I showed none. He was adrift, and my calm was the tide that was slowly, silently pulling him out to sea. The suspense was a living thing in our apartment. I was constantly aware of the cashier's check in my drawer, a ticking time bomb of his own creation. Every time he opened his laptop, I wondered if this would be the moment. Every time the mail came, I wondered if a bank statement would give me away. But nothing happened. He remained blissfully ignorant, cocooned in his belief that he was still in control, that his charm would eventually win me over, as it always had. One afternoon, I came home from work to find him excitedly scrolling through a real estate website. This was not unusual. He loved to window shop for houses, especially the ones that were far out of our price range. Clara, you have to see this place, he said, his eyes alight with genuine excitement. It's perfect. It has a big yard, a renovated kitchen. Everything we've been talking about. I walked over and looked at the screen. It was a nice house, a charming little bungalow with a welcoming front porch. It was also priced at the very top of our budget. A year ago, my heart would have leaped with excitement. We would have spent the evening fantasizing, planning, dreaming. Now, I felt nothing. I looked at the pictures and saw not a future home, but a collection of pixels on a screen. It's nice, I said. My lack of enthusiasm finally seemed to register. He turned to me, his smile fading. Nice, it's incredible. This could be it, Clara. We have the down payment. We could actually make an offer. He said it with such confidence. We have the down payment. The words hung in the air between us. He was so sure, so certain of the foundation he stood upon. He had no idea that the ground beneath his feet was gone and that he was standing on air. The moment was coming. The calm was about to break and the storm was about to hit. I braced myself. Let's check the account, Leo said, his excitement overriding any confusion he felt about my subdued reaction. I want to see exactly where we're at. We have to be close enough to call the realtor tomorrow. My heart gave a single, hard thump against my ribs, but my expression remained neutral. Okay, I said, taking a seat in the armchair across from the desk. I folded my hands in my lap and waited. He swiveled in his chair, his back to me, and clicked his mouse with energetic taps. He hummed a little tune under his breath. He was already imagining himself on that front porch, king of his castle. He was living in a future that no longer existed. From my vantage point, I could see the side of his face, illuminated by the glow of the monitor. I watched as his confident posture began to change. First, the humming stopped. Then, he leaned closer to the screen as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. His fingers, which had been flying across the keyboard, slowed to a single, deliberate click. Then another, and another. That's weird, he mumbled, more to himself than to me. The login isn't working for the savings. He tried again. I could hear the faint, frantic tapping of the keys. He switched browsers. He cleared his cache. He went through all the usual troubleshooting steps, his movements growing more agitated with each failed attempt. The air in the room grew thick with a tense, drawn-out silence. What the? He pushed his chair back and ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of pure frustration. It's saying the account doesn't exist. The bank's website must be down or something. I said nothing, I just watched him. He pulled out his phone and frantically navigated to the mobile banking app. His thumb swiped across the screen, his breathing growing heavier. I saw his shoulders tense. He stood up and started pacing the small space between the desk and the wall, his phone held tightly in his hand. No, 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 he whispered. This can't be right. He stopped pacing and turned to face me. His face, which had been so full of excitement just minutes before, was now a pale mask of confusion and rising panic. Clara, he said, his voice strained. The joint savings account, it's gone. I met his panicked gaze with a calm one. What do you mean, gone? I asked, my voice level. I wanted him to say it. I wanted him to articulate the reality he was just beginning to grasp. I mean it's gone, it's not there. The account we've been putting all our money into for 3 years has vanished. The money, Clara, the down payment, it's all gone. His voice cracked on the last word, the panic tipping into full-blown terror. He took a step towards me, his eyes wide with accusation. The confusion was burning away, replaced by a dawning, horrifying suspicion. His mind was clearly racing, trying to find a logical explanation. A bank error, a cyberattack. But as he looked at my perfectly calm demeanor, my steady gaze, my unbothered posture, he began to arrive at the only possible conclusion that fit the facts. His face hardened, the fear was now laced with anger. What did you do? He asked, his voice a low, dangerous growl. Where is our money? The question I had been waiting for all week. Our money, he still thought of it as ours. He still thought we were a we. He was about to learn, in the most concrete way imaginable, that his own words had dissolved that partnership. The storm had arrived. Where is our money, Clara? Leo repeated, his voice rising with a mixture of rage and disbelief. He took another step toward me, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. This isn't funny. Did you move it? Did you do something? You'd better start talking right now, or I swear. He let the threat hang in the air, but it had no power over me anymore. I had heard his ultimate threat, and I had already acted on it. There was nothing more he could say that could possibly affect me. I slowly rose from the armchair, my movements deliberate and unhurried. I didn't say a word. I held his furious gaze as I walked past him and into our bedroom. He followed me, his footsteps heavy with anger. Clara, don't you walk away from me. What did you do? He demanded from the doorway as I walked over to my dresser. I opened the top drawer and pushed aside a few sweaters. My fingers closed around the crisp paper of the cashier's check. I pulled it out, turned around, and walked back towards him. He stood in the doorway, blocking my path, his chest heaving. His face was a storm of emotions, anger, betrayal, and a deep, primal fear. He thought I had stolen from him. He thought I had emptied the account and hidden the money for myself. I stopped in front of him and held out the check. He didn't take it. He just stared at it, then at my face, then back at the check. He read the words printed on it. He saw his own name, pay to the order of Leo Vance. He saw the amount, an exact 50% of our former balance. His fury collapsed like a deflating balloon, replaced by a profound, staggering confusion. His mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. He looked up at me, his eyes pleading for an explanation that made sense. I gave it to him. You told me to remember that you could leave at any time, I said, my voice quiet but carrying the weight of the entire week. I did, I remembered, and I took your words seriously. I gently pushed the check into his hand. His fingers closed around it automatically, his knuckles white. A person who is truly planning a shared future doesn't use the threat of leaving as a weapon to win a fight, I continued, spelling it out for him as if he were a client and I were explaining a high-risk investment. A person who is a true partner doesn't hold that future hostage. You told me our relationship was conditional and could be terminated at your whim. So I adjusted our finances to reflect the temporary nature of our arrangement, as you defined it. I closed the joint account. Your half of the money is there, in your hand. My half is in a new account in my name only. It's not our money anymore, Leo. Your money is yours and my money is mine. The look on his face, it's a look I will never forget for as long as I live. It was a slow-motion tidal wave of realization. It wasn't just shock. It was the dawning, sickening horror of someone who has just made a catastrophic, irreversible mistake. He looked at the check, then at me, and the last vestiges of his anger and pride crumbled into dust. He finally understood. I hadn't acted out of rage. I had acted out of logic, his own logic. I hadn't stolen from him. I had given him exactly what he had asked for: a clear separation. I had simply built a firewall to protect myself from the risk he had so proudly announced. His knees seemed to buckle slightly. "Clara, no," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "No, I didn't mean it. You know I didn't mean it. I was just angry. I was trying to win the fight, that's all." "It doesn't matter if you meant it in that second, Leo," I said softly. "It mattered that you thought it. It mattered that you were willing to say it to hurt me. You showed me exactly who you are in that moment. You showed me that your commitment is conditional. I believe you." Tears began to well in his eyes. He, the man who so rarely showed any vulnerability, was completely undone. "Please," he begged, his voice breaking. "Please put it back. We can put it back. We can go to the bank tomorrow. We'll open the account again. We can still buy that house. Please, Clara, I'm sorry. I'm so, so sorry." He came toward me, trying to embrace me, the check still clutched in his hand. But I took a step back, holding up a hand to stop him. The power dynamic between us had been completely and irrevocably inverted. He was no longer the one holding all the cards, threatening to walk away. I was the one holding the keys to the future, and he was the one begging for another chance. The look on his face was one of utter desperation, the look of a man who had gambled everything on a bluff and had just been shown a royal flush. He finally realized that some words, once spoken, can't be taken back. They can only be noted. So now, I'm left with this decision. He's been begging, crying, promising to change, but the trust I had in our shared dream is gone. The cashier's check is still sitting on my desk. What would you do? Do you believe someone can fundamentally change, or are they just showing you who they've always been? I have a big decision to make about whether our future is something that can ever be rebuilt. After listening to today's story, perhaps it has raised some new questions in your mind. Every day on Reddit, new experiences and moments create fresh stories. We are all human, navigating complex relationships and difficult choices. If you enjoyed this story, feel free to share it with someone who might appreciate it. Thank you for your time, and don't forget to keep an eye out for more stories coming soon.